Part 196. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1951. The fifth prince was going to take his new princess to the vassal. Changjiao and Mingda had a good relationship with a brother of this age, so they decided to go to see him off in person. The queen did not stop them, and asked concubine Yang Guifei to send people outside the city gate with them. Another brother of Jifen was sent away, and the prince also sent it off. In addition, the fifth prince also sent messages to his friends who he thought had a good time. Those who are interested can go to the city gate to see him off. The next time we will see you is uncertain. Although it seems that he can come back during the festivals and the big day of the Queen Mother, but if the emperor does not allow it after the letter, he cannot leave the fief without permission. The fifth prince was standing on the official road beside the city gate. Today, because he was out of the city, the crown prince came to see him, so the guards directly intercepted those who entered and exited through the city gate, and blocked the road so that they could rest assured. He drank a glass of wine touted by the prince and looked up at the city gate, feeling a little uncomfortable. This is where he has lived since he was born, and is now leaving to live in a completely strange place. The fifth prince's eyes were slightly red, and he felt a little uncomfortable and a little aggrieved. He turned his head sideways, not wanting the prince to see it, but Bai Shan, Bai Erlang, and Zhou Man were standing here. The three met his red eyes, and Bai Shan remembered when they left Qilai village. He thought for a while, it seemed that there was nothing particularly sad, so he took it back with a sigh, and Bai Shan said, "We have prepared some gifts for you, and we have brought them all to the people around you. I wish you a smooth journey." Man Bao said, "There is a package on the top, and the contents can be taken out. This is for you to use on the road." The fifth prince's mood improved a little, and he asked, "What is it?" "An anti-mosquito and insect-repellent medicine bag is a must-have for home travel," Man Bao said. "If you think it's not very effective, you can take it apart and throw it into the fire when you can't catch up with the hostel at night." Smoked away. At this time, the fifth prince didn't know how rampant the insects in the wild were, so he couldn't feel Zhou Man's caring, but he still nodded and thanked him. "Bai Shandao, we also prepared some incense for you. It is for the house. The new house is damp, so it's good to smoke it. Bai Erlang, we also prepared some toys for you. If you are bored on the road, you can play with your princess." The fifth prince endured it, but couldn't hold back. "I'm not a child anymore, I don't need a toy, right?" The three nodded in unison. "Use it, use it." "Bai Shandao, don't be too polite, my husband is playing at such an old age." The fifth prince couldn't help but wonder, "What toy?" "You'll know when you take it apart." The fifth prince smiled, "Okay, I'll take it apart later." Seeing that there was not much sadness on the faces of the three of them, he sighed, "I don't know when we will see each other again. I didn't know it before, but I only heard a few words in the past 6 months. Thank you for what happened last year." Bai Shan and the others were stunned for a moment, and couldn't help frowning. "Who did you listen to?" Not many people knew about the fact that they favored Yang Heshu and put aside the fifth prince in the matter of Suyu. The fifth prince said with a distant gaze, "The Queen Mother told me that my concubine is simple in nature and thinks little. She is not good to tell her concubine about some things so as not to make her sad." The three of Bai Shan's scalps are numb, but the Queen's concubine actually knows everything. "That's why I only wrote a post for you this time, and you really came, so it's worth it for me to treat you as friends. 3 people, in the end, I received the post. It would be rude if I didn't come to say goodbye. Not to mention their previous friendship with the fifth prince, just because he is the main brother of Mingda and Princess Changjiao, he can't be like that." Seeing that the three of them were choked by him, the fifth prince laughed and asked, "I'm going to leave, don't you want to show a goodbye expression?" Man Bao said, "It's not like you're not coming back." "That's right," Bai Erlang said with a cough, "then why do you always have to come back, and it's the New Year's holiday. How many vassal kings can return to Beijing during the festivals? The fifth prince said with a wry smile. Don't see the third brother always running to the capital at every turn and think we can do the same. Without the consent of the father and the court, you cannot leave the fief without permission. Even if the father and mother have passed their birthdays, we may not be able to come back together, the fifth prince said melancholy, so we may not see each other again in the future. Don't worry, you can definitely see it. Man Bao was still confident. You can't come to see us, we can see you. Bai Shan pondered, it's a good idea to play on your fief. After all, you are the second child there. If you eat well, live well, you must also play well. The fifth prince asked, I am the second child, who is the first? The three looked at him in unison, and the fifth prince returned to his senses. Oh, yes, the boss is the father. The emotions that he had accumulated in his heart were completely dissipated through such a nonsense chat. He shook his head and smiled, greeted the three and turned to meet other friends and siblings. When he finally got on the horse reluctantly, the sun was half high, and Man Bao felt a little sunburned, so he put his palm on his forehead and said, it will take more than an hour to send off. This is also the longest farewell Bai Shan has ever seen. He opened the folding fan in his hand to help Man Bao support it on top of his head, and sighed, actually, what the fifth prince said is right, if you go, you may not be able to return to the capital again. But it's not the most uncomfortable thing. The most uncomfortable thing should be that you can't leave the fief without an edict. Otherwise, except for the capital, the sky is vast, and it's good to play everywhere. It was only then that Man Bao remembered, well, this rule sounds pitiful after all, you have to stay in one place for the rest of your life. Bai Erlang asked smoothly, would you like to open your eyes for them? Man Bao and Bai Shan glanced at him emotionlessly. Bai Erlang asked, why are you looking at me like that? Man Bao said, if there is a price, there is an income. He has obtained such a large piece of land, and his children and grandchildren will enjoy the support of the people. This is the price he needs to pay. Bai Shan nodded, it's a joke, this county king will go to that prince tomorrow for a walk, and then he will go to live with another county king. What should they do if they start a series? If you rebel, who's to blame? Man Bao is mentally retarded to express his opinion on this matter. What concatenation, Princess Mingda, who stood at the front to send the fifth brother away, came up with her skirt and only heard the last sentence. The three of Man Bao immediately shook their heads and said, nothing. Bai Erlang looked at Mingda up and down and said, Princess Mingda, your body has really improved a lot, look, your face has turned a lot more rosy. Hey, it's even more red. Bai Shan and Man Bao. It's too late tonight, I don't think I can write more. I'll add it tomorrow. I really want to give everyone a crying and laughing expression. Today is really scum. I revised the last chapter a little, not much, just a few sentences, you can look back. Okay, good night. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1952. Bai Shan, who came over, stared at Bai Erlang, and Man Bao, who came over, also stared at Ming Da. After a while, the two of them turned their eyes away in tacit understanding and gave them an excuse, the sun is too hot. Bai Erlang looked up at the sky subconsciously. Of course, he wouldn't look directly at the sun, but he felt it. Although it was a little bit sunburned, it wouldn't turn red in a while, right? When Bai Erlang reacted in hindsight, Mingda had already turned his head and said to Man Bao, we are going back to the palace. Successfully changed the topic. Bai Erlang scratched his head, stood quietly, waited for Mingda and Man Bao to say goodbye and left before asking Bai Shan, did I say something wrong? Bai Shan asked curiously, do you still care about this? Man Bao said to Bai Erlang, I heard from Chang Yu that His Majesty is going to choose a consort for Ming Da. Bai Erlang was heartbroken and couldn't help muttering, this is too small, What's the hurry? Man Bao continued, the Empress Dowager is getting more and more ill. Bai Erlang stopped talking. Mingda and Chang Yu got into the carriage, and concubine Yang Gui also wiped her tears and glanced at the end of the road. After confirming that she really couldn't see her son, she also helped the next person to get on the carriage. The prince took them back to the palace. Man Bao and other people who came to see him off waited to step back and wait for the prince and their frames to leave before saying hello and getting into the car. Today is Xiumu Day, the Ministry of Rites is so considerate, the good day chosen is just in time for Xiumu, but not many people come. Except for the palace, only Yang Haoi's family came to send people, and there are 5 the good friends the prince made before, and the people who surrounded him in the past did not show up. Bai Shan got into the carriage and said to the 2, this is the warmth of human affection. Man Bao nodded. Bai Erlang was distracted and ignored them. Man Bao and Bai Shan looked at each other, and they both winked in front of Bai Erlang. It took Bai Erlang a long time to recover, and when he recovered, he saw that the 2 were looking at each other, not knowing what they were saying with their eyes. His teeth were sore, and he said, can you 2 stop for a while, the scenery outside is not bad. Bai Shan asked, what's the view outside? Why not, there are so many delicious foods outside. Bai Erlang opened the curtains and looked out, only to realize that it was a wilderness outside, and he paused, where is this going? Bai Shan and Man Bao looked at him silently and said, Mr. Zhang built a courtyard outside the city and invited him to stay there for 2 days to escape the summer heat. Who was talking about it early this morning? They had already agreed to go to Mr. Jiang's other courtyard after sending the 5th prince, because it was just such a coincidence that they were in the same direction. Because of Bai Erlang's unusual forgetfulness, after returning from Mr. Jiang's courtyard, Man Bao and Bai Shan quietly met in the garden. Man Bao, unknowingly, junior brother is almost 17. Bai Shan, it's the 3rd junior brother. Man Bao continued, it's time to say kiss. Bai Shan thought for a while and said, it's not easy. Your Majesty is very fond of Princess Mingda, and I'm afraid he wants to tell her a very good marriage. Man Bao thought about it for a while, and felt that it was really possible. I'm afraid the emperor thinks that good is the first in family background, first in appearance, first in talent, and first in character. Let's see what Mingda means, Man Bao said after thinking about it, there is still the queen. I think the queen will listen to what Mingda means, and Erlang is not bad. Bai Shan nodded. Although he often despised him, his junior brother said that he could, and it was really good compared to the people outside. The 2 looked at each other, and Man Bao said, I'll ask where Mingda is. Bai Shan said, I'll ask Bai Er there. Bai Shan felt weird at this moment, and whispered, why do you think we are his elders? Man Bao smiled and said, we are senior sister and senior brother. They decided to keep it a secret, but in less than half a day, the family knew everything that should be known. Mr. Zhuang has always been free for his disciples. As long as what they want to do is not too dangerous, or violates the law and morality, they just let it go, and occasionally give them advice. So he didn't stop the 2 disciples wanting to be a matchmaker and was daring to want their junior and junior to become the concubine. Madame Lu pondered for a moment and then said, speaking of Erlang, he is not too young, so he should say kiss. I will write to your cousin to come over. Bai Dalan also quickly realized that he was young, and he didn't hold back his face. He opened his mouth for a while before he regained his senses, and then said to Mrs. Lu, cousin, isn't that bad? Mrs. Lu smiled and said, the 8 characters haven't been written yet, what's the good or bad? Your junior sister and younger brothers said the same thing, but Erlang really should say kiss, he is now a student of Chongguan Hall. Even if you can't say the princess, you can say other girls from a similar family background. You can't control such a big thing, why don't you let your father come over? Bai Dalan remembered his classmate's suggestion. In fact, his younger brother is barely considered a fragrant pastry in the capital. Their family has a lot of money and is also a side branch of a noble family. Although their family has only 2 brothers, they are both direct descendants. He is studying in the Quazijian, and his younger brother even sneaks in. Went to Chongquen Museum as a companion to the prince. It wasn't obvious before, but now that the crown prince has given birth to the eldest son, his position has become more and more stable. If there is no accident, he will become the emperor in the future, then his younger brother will go more smoothly than others by virtue of his former companionship. So this year, many classmates jokingly want to marry him, and there are also many classmates who have younger sisters and cousins at home. Baidalan never responded because he felt that his younger brother was still as clueless as a child, but now that he thinks about it, he will naturally become enlightened when he is old. However, it still doesn't seem to be able to handle it. Baidalan glanced at Bai Shan and Zhou Man. These 2 were very lucky, maybe they really made it happen? Baidalan thought in a trance, so it is possible for him to become in law with the emperor? Old Zhutu knew it. He quietly said to Qianxi, I just looked carefully, don't say, the second young master is quite handsome, maybe he can really recruit the princess. Qian. After the old Zhutu finished speaking, he slammed his mouth and said, but I also looked carefully. In terms of coming and going, our son-in-law looks better. Qianxi said, this matter hasn't been written yet. Don't say it outside, or it will be bad for people to hear it. I know, I'll tell you, old Zhou said, besides, who can I talk to? You should let the 5th and the others pay attention. Wu Wulang and the others won't talk about it? Ever since Man Bao moved here after receiving the crown prince's reward and she became an official again, Zhou Lijun said that the family affairs are such trivial things as cooking an extra dish at night. You can't speak out, and outsiders will pretend to be dumb when they ask. Even if it is a big family, the access control and tone of the big family are also different from loose and tight. When Lijun enters and leaves some back houses in the capital, he often sees people wandering around asking for news about each family. It is almost impossible to guard against. See you at 6 p.m. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1953. Man Bao doesn't know that he doesn't live at home very often, but Wu Zhou knows it. When they first moved in, many people liked to come to their corner door. Some of them sold goods, and some borrowed things to deliver. Sometimes there was no excuse. Is knocking on the door and talking to them squatting by the door. Wu Wulang and Zhou Lixiu didn't know about them at first, and they thought it was the enthusiasm of the neighbors. Isn't this the same as in the village? Everyone squatted and chatted together when they were free. Later, Zhou Lijun followed Mrs. Lu to learn housekeeping for a period of time, and later they were not allowed to talk about family affairs. You can squat at the door and chat with people, you can say anything, but you can't talk about family affairs, even if you see a person stepping on the skin of a melon and falling all over on the way home today, it's okay. If someone doesn't know how to look at the face, it's enough, then ask back, just ask about their master, what is the secret? After such an operation, after more than a month, no one will call the door and chat with the old Zhou family in the back corner door of Zhou's house. Now occasionally the servants who watch the door will talk, but Mrs. Lu is strict with the housekeeping, so the servants will not tell the master's affairs. So the news was well kept inside the Zhou residence, but except for Bai Erlang, the party involved, everyone knew what he should and shouldn't know. During dinner, Auntie Rong even specially made a braised lion head for Bai Erlang, and Mrs. asked Man Bao to bring a bowl of steamed meat over. The two people's statements were surprisingly consistent. Man Bao said, "My sister-in-law asked you to eat more, eat as much as you can to grow stronger. Only then can you marry a daughter-in-law." Sitting at the dinner table, Bai Erlang was skeptical. This is for me. Man Bao nodded. Bai Erlang glanced at Bai Shan and asked, isn't it for Bai Shan? No, Man Bao emphasized, it's for you. The maid who brought the dish also smiled and said, Master Tang, Auntie Rong's braised lion head is also made for you. Bai Erlang did a serious mental calculation. No, my birthday is still 3 months away. Bai Shan asked Man Bao to add a pair of bowls and chopsticks. Seeing that he was still struggling, he said, just eat it for you. Bai Erlang always felt that something was wrong when he heard this. He took a big ball, looked at Bai Shan and then at Man Bao, and finally turned to look at Mr. Zhuang, and asked hesitantly, Sir. Mr. Zhuang smiled and nodded, let's eat. Bai Erlang felt that even if Bai Shan and Man Bao would cheat on him, Master probably wouldn't, so he raised his eyes to look at them and took a bite. Man Bao also wanted to eat when he saw it, so he took his own bowls and chopsticks from the servants and simply ate here. Old Zhou's family over there knew that Man Bao was eating there as soon as he left, so they stopped waiting for her. Bai Shan never looked for Bai Erlang until after they entered the palace. The two of them share a room, and they often talk a little when the lights go out at night, which is naturally the same tonight. Bai Shan asked, what kind of wife do you want to marry? Bai Erlang also just lay down and was fanning the wind with a palm fan. Hearing this, he sighed, it's okay for you to love each other in front of me on weekdays. Is it necessary to show love when you are apart? Bai Shandao, who has shown affection to you, this is a question, and it is a literal question, so please answer, what kind of wife do you want to marry? Bai Erlang was amazed, he half sat up with the palm fan, and looked at the opposite side through the dim moonlight. It's strange, are you concerned about your cousin? No, Bai Shan said calmly, I'm concerned about junior brother. He said, as a senior brother, isn't it a matter of course to be concerned about the lifelong affairs of the junior brother? As the saying goes, the eldest brother is like a father. When Bai Erlang heard this, he was so angry that he threw down his fan, stretched out his feet and stepped over the two beds and kicked him. Bai Shan rolled in and avoided him, laughed twice, and said, okay, okay. Now, I won't tease you anymore, I'm asking you seriously, do you have someone you like in your heart? Bai Erlang snorted and continued to lie back on the bed without speaking. Bai Shan propped up his head and looked at him from a distance, but at night he could only see the outlines of people, but couldn't see the expressions on people's faces. Hey, our brothers and sisters have been through so many years, what can't you say to me? I even know you're 7 years old and still wet the bed. Bai Erlang exploded in an instant, jumping up and jumping over to beat him. Bai Shan only stretched out one leg, don't come, my kung fu is much better than yours. Bai Erlang was furious, but he lowered his voice subconsciously, I didn't. That was an accident. He knew that they were too tired to play in the mountains that day, and he drank a lot of water, so he couldn't get up during the nap. Bai Shan smiled and said, so what can't you say? Since you don't say it, I'll ask directly, do you like Princess Mingda? Bai Erlang sat beside his bed and sighed after a while, I can't ask her if I like it or not. Have you been begging? Bai Erlang shook his head in the dark, and said, isn't it written in the book, the words of the matchmaker for the parent's life, if I can't be sure that I can pass the elder's level, if I ask her, isn't it harming her? Bai Shan nodded in agreement, the parents on our side are fine, the problem is on the side of the emperor and the queen. Bai Erlang stepped on the bed and went back to his bed to lie down, and continued to fan the fan, isn't this nonsense? But the question of whether Princess Mingda is willing or not is still a big question. Bai Shan asked Bai Erlang, I mean, if Princess Mingda is also interested, what are you going to do? Then I'll go and ask His Majesty for a kiss. Bai Erlang shook his legs, still very confident, I'm not bad at all except for my studies. Bai Shan didn't expect his self-perception to be like this, and was amazed for a while, Do you think your weakness is that you are poor in reading? Bai Erlang was silent for a while and then said, okay, it's a little worse, but it's compared with you, I compared with Feng Zonping and the others, I think it's okay. Bai Shan, so what is the family background? It's not bad in the family, right? Bai Erlang has been like an overlord in the village since he was a child. In the entire Qilai village, including the nearby Dali village and several other villages, except for Bai Shan and Zhou Man, there are no other children who can surpass them. Above him, even in Yazhu and the capital, he never counseled. There are very few people who can bully him in the family world. What is there to be afraid of? The big deal is to go home and inherit the property left to him by his father. Bai Erlang continued to shake his palm fan and said, I look good, and I have nothing to say about my character, but I can barely read, but Princess Mingda likes reading very much. If she doesn't like reading like Princess Changjiao, she only likes to eat. Enough. Then he must be very confident. Bai Shan rolled over and said, come on, I think it's good that you have this shortcoming, otherwise, you won't be able to go to heaven. This is wrong, I will replace it in a while, I am really dizzy today. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1954. Mingda was more candid than Bai Cheng, and when Man Bao asked her, he nodded and said, I like him quite a bit. Man Bao couldn't help but wonder, what do you like about him? Mingda couldn't help but smile and said, I think he is very similar to you. Man Bao, how does she look like Bai Er? She is so smart. Mingda smiled and said, that's it, the energy is very similar, and he is not only healthy but also happy. I know that you are not afraid of us, and he is not afraid of us, so you don't want to get anything from us. I am very happy to be friends with you, and there are very few people like this around me. What Mingda didn't say clearly was that there were not many around her, but only 2 or 3 of them. It was Sister Changjiao, their sisters had a deep relationship, but in the beginning, including now, she was kind to her, not only because of their sisterhood since childhood, but also because she was the daughter of the father and mother. Although Mingda didn't care about this, but when she met Zhou Man and Bai Erlang, they didn't try to please them because she was the princess, and they didn't cherish them when they wanted to get anything from her. She said, it's not that you have to recruit him as the concubine, but I think I like him very much. When I see him with you, I can't help laughing and I feel happy. She smiled and said, if you don't ask, I won't say that marriage matters are the orders of my parents. I don't know what kind of consort my father will choose for me. Man Bao asked, aren't you going to ask? Mingda shook his head slightly, but nodded again, my father will tell me, I don't need to ask. Man Bao thought about it for a while, but couldn't quite understand, you are so careless, that's the person who will be with you all the time in the future. She said, I can't do it. If we live together in the future, we have to look good first, otherwise we will be bored in the future. Mingda couldn't help but burst out laughing and asked, so you chose Bai Shan, but not Bai Erlang. Man Bao widened his eyes and said incredulously, what did you say, how could I choose Bai Er? That was simply unimaginable. Mingda thought about it for a while, but also felt unimaginable. She couldn't help laughing and asked her, but from the outsider's point of view, the conditions between their cousins are actually similar, although Bai Shan's family background is stronger than Bai Er's. But Bai Shan lost his parents when he was young, and Bai Er has both parents and brothers, so I don't know how much better than Bai Shan is in this one. In terms of friendship, you two met earlier, and you are in the same village, why did you choose Bai Shan instead of him? Man Bao opened his mouth slightly and was speechless. Well, what do you mean by that? It's something I've never thought about. Mingda said, yeah, I never thought about it, I didn't even think about marrying him, I just thought I liked him. Then have you thought about it now? Man Bao said, you must have thought about it now. Mingda didn't deny it, and smiled. Since it's all mentioned, naturally I can't help but think about it, and my thoughts are only a matter of moments. Yeah, I just gave a big shake, Man Bao complained, and then asked, what do you think? Mingda smiled and said, let's go with the flow. I don't believe it, you have never been an obedient person. Why are you so obedient now? I've only heard people say that Sister Changio is disobedient, and this is the first time I've heard people say I'm disobedient. That's different. Princess Changio is fierce on the face and complaining on the lips, but she will never say no to the arrangements of Her Majesty and the Empress, but you are different. No matter how docile Mingda behaves, she has a lot of ideas in her heart. Seeing her looking like she broke the casserole and asked to the end, Mingda took off her shoes, sat cross-legged on the couch and said, okay, it's okay to tell you. She said, my father said that he wanted to give me a kiss, but he was not satisfied after seeing several children. I figured it out myself, and it is impossible to decide this year. And the Queen Mother's health is even worse. If she can't make a decision after this year, then she will have to wait at least 2 more years before she can say kiss. It's busy, and it may be 3 years later when she gets engaged. Therefore, in the case of guessing that the marriage may not be settled, Mingda will naturally not take the initiative to mention her little care for Bai Erlang. Besides, 3 years doesn't sound like a long time, but it does get longer. Bai Cheng will be crowned at that time, right? Man Bao said, senior brother Bai only got married after he was crowned, so he's not too old. Mingda listened for a while, then said, okay, there's a little more. She said softly, 3 years later, I don't even know if I'm still alive. Man Bao was taken aback and hurriedly said, how do you say that? Although you are weaker, you are not like this, right? Mingda smiled bitterly and said, this is you. In fact, many people inside and outside the palace know that I have been insufficient since I was born, and I am stronger than Yin or the Yin family. She said, he and I are 2 well-known sick seedlings inside and outside the palace. It seems to be better now, but the insufficiency that was born at birth, I don't think it can be cured. So I'm not sure what kind of concubine the royal father wants to choose for me, Mingda said. Is it to conspire, or to win over, or just for the short days I have left in the future? Man Bao didn't expect her to think so much, and after a while, he said, no wonder you're always low on energy, and you're thinking too much. Why don't you ask your Majesty? She said, he loves you so much, I think he will discuss it with you. Mingda shook his head, I don't want the emperor to be embarrassed, so wait and see what kind of consort the emperor wants to choose. If it is the first 2, I will not mention it. If it is the last one, I have to think about it. Man Bao, why are you still thinking about it? There is very little chance of listening to her junior brother like this, only 1 in 6. Mingda said, naturally, I have to consider it. If my health is not good at that time, my front foot will be married, and my hind foot will die. Wouldn't it make me a widower for nothing? Man Bao, you think too much. So when they returned to the Chongguan Museum, Man Bao and Bai Erlang said, Mingda said to think about it, she doesn't want to make you a widower. Bai Erlang stared, did you still ask her? You have to ask people what they mean before you go to ask for a kiss, right? Man Bao said, but now I know, she doesn't hate you, and she likes you a little bit, so you can work hard towards the emperor. The life of the parents, naturally, the consent of the parents must be obtained before the righteous master can be dealt with. Is this fair and above? Bai Erlang became worried, how hard is this? I can't see your Majesty. Man Bao thought for a while and said, I see it occasionally, how about I send you a message? Bai Erlang, what do I have to say to His Majesty? No, she is often silent. It's very late, everyone go to bed first, the next chapter is around 11:30 in the evening. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1955. Bai Erlang's eyes fell on Bai Shan, who was on the side. Among the three of us, only you have the experience of pleasing your father-in-law. When Man Bao heard this, he also looked up at him. Bai Shan said, "It's simple, just do what you like." He did the same to both Uncle Joe and Uncle Joe, both fathers-in-law. Uncle Joe likes to listen to nice words and like money, so he always gives Uncle Joe something, not very expensive, but very innovative, and always something Uncle Joe likes and needs. Coupled with his natural advantages, such as his good looks and good reading, he was easily liked by Uncle Joe. As for Josiah, although it is a little more difficult, after all, they don't meet each other, and his preferences are all based on inference. But he already had a general understanding in his heart. He liked all kinds of things in the world, and he felt that the underworld lacked those things, so he asked Manbao to make offerings for him, and most of them were offered only once. Repeat, but the amount will not be huge. He hasn't figured it out yet. Does he really need a large amount, or does he feel distressed that Manbao deliberately asks for less? He had mentioned several times that he wanted to offer something directly in large quantities, but Manbao refused. Although Manbao is very smart, but sometimes he is a little slow, so he is still not sure whether this is the original intention of Josiah, or whether he is distressed for his daughter. Bai Erlang didn't mind Bai Shan's distraction, leaning on the railing and worrying, "Follow what you like." "What does your majesty like?" Bai Shan Shun answered, "Money." Seeing Bai Erlang looking over in disbelief, Bai Shan said, "Your majesty is short of money, he must like money." Manbao also thought hard for a while, and whispered, "I think he still likes to hear nice things from people." Bai Erlang and Bai Shan said as they should, "Isn't this normal? Who doesn't like to hear nice words?" "That's different. The emperor will be especially happy when he hears nice words." Bai Erlang was entangled, "But what should I do? Am I going to be a minister? However, I can't say anything good to his majesty." Manbao gave him a bad idea, "You just praise him for his wiseness and martial arts, and you can put anything nice on him." Bai Erlang thought for a while, his back froze, and he shook his head again and again, "I can't tell." Because of some well-known historical reasons, Bai Erlang didn't think that he was so wise and martial, and even secretly scolded him with Bai Shan Manbao in private. Bai Erlang couldn't make him compliment others with his eyes open. Manbao and Bai Shan shrugged together and said, "There's no other way, you can only give the emperor money to marry his daughter to you." Bai Erlang felt that their proposal was very unreliable. No matter how rich he is, can an emperor be rich? Manbao nodded affirmatively and said, "If you have cash, maybe you really have more money than the emperor. But not so much else." Bai Shan stretched out his hand and patted his shoulder and said, "How hard you work, when you make money, use money to smash him until he agrees." Bai Erlang, "How much does that cost?" "No, the key shouldn't be to throw money at the emperor, won't he cut him off?" He wanted to marry a daughter-in-law, but he didn't want to risk beheading to marry a daughter-in-law. Bai Shan also made a joke, naturally he wouldn't really let Bai spend money, and as a senior brother, he became serious after the joke, and said to Manbao, "You can only pass the prince." Manbao also thought of the prince, nodded and said, "I will go to the East Palace tomorrow to see the little emperor's grandson and talk to the prince by the way." Bai Shan nodded and warned, "Don't talk too much, just stop when you click." Manbao said confidently, "I know, I've seen a lot of people matchmaking for my brothers." Bai Shan and Bai Erlang. The next day, when Manbao went to look for the princess, the queen in the Tai Chi hall knew the little things that a few children were doing in private. She couldn't help sitting up straighter, and asked the maid who bowed her head respectfully by the side, "Mingda said that she likes Bai Chang." "Yes, the princess and Lord Zhou have been discussing for half an hour." She paused for a while, and still said word for word what Princess Mingda said about her marriage considerations. The queen never thought that her daughter would think so much. She always knew that she was sensible, but she didn't know she was so sensible. The queen, who was still a little unhappy at the beginning, only felt distressed at this time. She thought about it and asked, "What is the princess doing now?" "Drawing in the study." The queen nodded and waved, "Go down." Then she asked Aunt Chang to go to the Chongquen Museum. She went there in the morning and didn't come back until the afternoon. She bowed and said, no one heard what the three of them were talking about. She paused for a while and continued helplessly, "Master Zhou and young Master Bai sit together whenever they have free time, so I can't see any difference between these days and the past. The only difference is probably that someone heard it the other night." There was some movement in the house of Mr. Bai and the others. It seemed that they were fighting, but it didn't sound very similar, and the two of them were fine the next day. Maybe it was just a normal fight. The queen asked, "Any more?" "Yes." Aunt Chang raised her head slightly. "Today, Lord Zhou went to see the little emperor's grandson, and he mentioned second young Master Bai and Princess Mingda when talking to the crown princess in the room." The queen breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately this was not Mingda's unrequited love. She thought about it carefully, but only remembered a vague figure in her mind. She was really unfamiliar with Bai Erlang. The most profound memory in her memory was probably when someone said that he had a conflict with Yunfan in the imperial garden. The queen paused for a while when she thought of it, only to realize that the fate of Mingda and Bai Cheng started so early, and it has been 3 years in the count. The queen let out a sigh of relief and said to Aunt Chang, "Let those who serve Mingda be more careful, and report back if there is anything." Yes, Aunt Chang is the queen's confidant, and she watched several princes and princesses grow up, and among them, she also likes the smart and sensible Princess Mingda the most, so she was quiet for a while but couldn't hold back and asked, "Ms." The queen looked at the book at hand for a long time without saying a word. "This is the book of the harem. Don't look at her who only manages a harem, and occasionally receives some book of orders, but she is also very busy. In addition to raising children, there is basically no time to rest." The queen put away the book and put it aside. "I vaguely remember that Bai Erlang's family has a small population. Is he the youngest son?" "Yes, it's the youngest son, and there is only one eldest brother in the family. Now, the 4 schools of study in the Qiaozijian are admitted by himself." The queen said, "It's a bit of a skill." Aunt Chang obviously went to investigate specially, and it took only half a day to get a rough idea. She said, "His father was only a country squire, but he was an offshoot of the Bai clan in Longzhou. He branched out during his grandfather's generation and went to Mianzhou alone to set up a branch. It is a descendant of the Bai clan, and it is included in the clan chronicle. In the joint activities of Kixi festival, the passerby king is the book friend Ace Lan. Here I wish Jingjing and Xiezinyu's lovers to be married, and they will be as sweet as Man Bao and Bai Shan now and in the future. Well, Yuzhu here also wishes all book friends a happy Kixi festival, whether it is a single dog like me, or a lover like Jingjing Xie. Everyone is happy Kixi festival. Good night. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1956. Man Bao stepped on the chair and took down the top booklet to look at it. She turned her head and glanced at Xiao Yuanzheng, who was frowning not far away, and asked with a smile, "What's wrong with you? Are you not happy?" Xiao Yuanzheng frowned and said, "I have something to do. Today is the day when His Majesty asked for the ping and pulse." Imperial Physician Lu went to the Imperial Physician's office for a class. Man Bao immediately volunteered, "I'll go for you." Xiao Yuanzheng couldn't help looking up at her. Seeing her so excited, he asked suspiciously, "Why do you want to go? Aren't you free?" Seeing that Xiao Yuan was looking at her, she said, "Okay, I miss His Majesty a little bit, so I can just go and see him. Xiao Yuanzheng had a look of disbelief. Yesterday was the 15th day, and it was the great court meeting. Didn't she go to it? Zhou Man opened his round eyes, stood on the chair and held the booklet and asked, "Do you want me to go for you? If not, I'll lend the booklet and read it." Xiao Yuan was looking at the booklet in Zhou Man's hand. That row was all about the pulse cases of the first emperor and concubine. He knew that Zhou Man was writing about symptoms and various medications from pregnancy to childbirth recently, which should be used for research. Xiao Yuanzheng hesitated for a moment before nodding, "Okay, you can go for me." Zhou Man was a grade 6 in the Taiyuan hospital, just on the threshold of asking for the ping and pulse for the emperor. She was familiar with the emperor, so there should be no problem. Man Bao immediately stuffed the booklet back, and said to Imperial Dr. Lu, who was on duty today, "I won't borrow it for the time being. Jump off the chair and go to pack your medicine chest." Imperial Dr. Lu frowned and complained to Xiao Yuanzheng, "Yuanzheng, is it really okay for Zhou Man to see His Majesty like this?" Xiao Yuanzheng waved his hand and said, "Don't worry, Zhou Man is very measured. Things are all in a hurry today. I went to see the Queen Mother and I have to see Prince Gong. You can take care of me at the Taiyuan hospital." Imperial physician Lu opened his mouth to speak. He was busy, but they were not busy. He was also a 6th rank imperial physician, and he could also ask the emperor for the ping and pulse. But it's hard to say such words, so Imperial Dr. Lu can only hold back. So in the afternoon, Man Bao appeared in the emperor's study with a medicine box. The emperor stretched out his hand and looked at her curiously, "Why did you come to ask me for a pulse of peace? As long as he is not sick, Zhou Man is basically not responsible for his ping and pulse. After all, she wants to give the ping and pulse of the queen, princesses, and several concubines in the harem. She is one of the busiest imperial doctors in the imperial hospital." Man Bao said, "Xiao Yuan is busy today, and Imperial Physician Lu has gone to class. How many people are Dr. Lu waiting for?" However, when the emperor saw that Zhou Man had put his hand on the pulse, he did not ask. As for the ping and mai, the process is very familiar to each other. The emperor answered Zhou Man's routine questions about what he ate, what he drank, and whether he slept well. Then Zhou Man asked, "Your Majesty, are you in a good mood these 2 days? Have you been angry?" The emperor glanced at her, "You also know that I will be angry." Man Bao remembered that the emperor seemed to have had a quarrel with Lord Tang during the great court meeting yesterday, but it didn't seem to be serious, so he wouldn't be angry, right? Man Bao asked, "Would you like me to give you a few injections to relieve depression?" The emperor hesitated, but in the end he couldn't hold back. He went to the inner room to change clothes, and after a while, he lay down on the couch. Gu Zhong smiled and put a piece of silk cloth on his back to keep him cool, and Man Bao persuaded him while sticking a needle, "Your Majesty, although it's human nature to be happy, angry, sad, and happy, it's not good for your body to always be angry." "Well, you should talk to Wei Ji more about this." Man Bao, "Your Majesty, shouldn't you be thinking about how to control your emotions and make yourself less angry?" The emperor said, "I have been learning how to cultivate qi for decades, and now my temper is very good. What will it be like if I cultivate it again?" He didn't want to use the word cowardly to describe himself. "Very good," the emperor blocked all the words that Man Bao had prepared in advance. She sighed, the other party was in a bad mood, how could she mention it? Hearing her sigh, the emperor couldn't help laughing, "Why, you are troubled at such a young age." "Why not? Although I'm young, I have a lot of things to do with my studies, career, and family." Man Bao took acupuncture points to give the emperor acupuncture, and talked to him while doing it, "But I'm rarely angry, so I'm fine." The emperor felt that he was a little angry again now, but he was still angry with the doctor, "Who can make you angry?" "That's a lot, Man Bao said quickly, Bai Shan always bullies me, and Bai Er always helps him, but I don't have much air. The emperor didn't feel better, but felt more troubled, just like he and Wei Ji and others said that the queen bullied him. After Man Bao finished speaking, he remembered something, and turned the topic to Bai Erlang forcefully, but my third junior brother is still good, and he will help me occasionally. The emperor thought she was changing the subject, and asked cooperatively, well, your third junior brother is fair. In fact, he felt that her junior brother was fighting firewood. Man Bao didn't know this, so he nodded reluctantly and said, it's okay. Man Bao gave the emperor a needle, and several times wanted to ask him what kind of consort he planned to choose for Mingda, but he opened his mouth and still didn't ask. The timing was not good. After Man Bao gave the emperor acupuncture, he felt much better, but Man Bao left in a normal manner. Gu Zhong had long seen that Zhou Man had something on his mind, but he couldn't guess what it was, but he seemed to have something to do with the emperor. Therefore, when serving the emperor to change clothes, Gu Zhong said, Lord Zhou Xiao seems to have something on his mind. When the needle was inserted, the emperor was lying on his stomach, and he asked, is there any? Gu Zhong smiled and nodded. After thinking about it, the emperor hummed, no wonder she took the initiative to ask Yang to ask for my pulse. Since she doesn't tell me, then we shouldn't know. However, I was a little curious in my heart, what can Zhou Man do to find him? Within 2 days, the emperor vaguely guessed it, because it was rare for their family to get together for dinner. The emperor hugged the little emperor and teased him for a while, watching him carefully moving his buttocks while sitting on the couch, then he smiled and sat aside with the queen to watch. At this time, the prince asked the emperor, has the emperor selected a concubine for Mingda? Mingda and Chang Yu sat in the small house behind the screen and looked at the 2 sets of clothes brought by the crown princess. They were made by the embroidered mother of her parents' family. She thought they were very beautiful, so they gave them to the 2 little girls. The emperor could vaguely hear the crown princess say, you can use it by changing the size of the waist and shoulders slightly. This simple and elegant set is suitable for Mingda. The emperor sighed and said, why is it so easy? I sent letters to Wang Min and Lu Hui, and asked them to let the young disciples of the clan come to Beijing to have a look. The prince was curious, did they agree? The emperor was very depressed. Wang Min didn't refuse, but Lu Hui didn't agree, saying that he was busy recently and didn't have time to go to Beijing. In addition to the Wang family and the Lu family, the emperor also talked to some ministers who played well in the court, and wanted to see the young children in their family who were not engaged. See you at 6 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Zhu. Chapter 1957. Only. The emperor was not in a good mood. Now the ministers in Beijing, there were young people of school age in the family. He had already tried to talk to Chang Yu before, and finally selected Wei Ji's son Wei Yu carefully. For the rest, he didn't like it when he was choosing Chang Yu, let alone choosing Mingdan now. So there are only some vassal officials left. But those officials take their family members outside all the year round. Regarding their children and nephews, the emperor has only heard of them, and some have never even heard of them. It is impossible to say how reassuring it is. So recently, the emperor asked Yin Li to check the family members of the Jadu envoys in various places. As a result, I have not heard of a few children who have both political integrity and ability. After checking 3 Jadu envoys, there are 2 nephews who do some bad things of stealing chickens and dogs and bullying others. The reason why he had an unpleasant relationship with Lord Tang last time was also because of disagreements over the handling of the sons of an official. The old man of Tang thought that the emperor punished people too much and broke the law, so he asked the emperor to change it. At the moment, the emperor does not have much hope for the sons of officials in the DPRK and China. Instead, he wants to choose one of the family's reserve talents to be the concubine. So he recently sent letters to several family leaders, and the emperor sighed, It's a pity that Yang Changbo married early, otherwise he would be quite suitable. Prince Y is not only his sister, but also his father now eyeing Yang Heshug. The emperor felt very sorry in his heart. He felt that among the children of the entire family, Yang Heshug, who was both virtuous, talented, and beautiful, was worthy of them. When the emperor heard the prince ask about Mingda's marriage, he asked, "Why, do you have a suitable candidate?" The prince frowned. He didn't like Bai Cheng. Even if the princess said good things for him, he still felt that Bai Cheng's family background and talents were far from being wise enough. But after listening to the candidates his father had recently looked for, several children from aristocratic families who were selected were politely rejected, and he immediately remembered what happened when he got married. The prince said unpleasantly, "Didn't the royal father swear not to marry the noble family?" The emperor was stunned for a moment, and said shamelessly, "Have I said it?" The prince said, "I don't remember my father, but my son still remembers. The patriarchs of the big families and the ladies of the back house may also remember. You married Mingda like this, didn't you make her laughed at?" The emperor's face turned cold. "Who dares?" He snorted, "And you didn't marry into a noble family without sisters." The prince said bluntly, "Second sister and third sister are the ones who go back to the palace the least often. Although life is more beautiful than other sisters, they are less comfortable." The queen, who had been coaxing her grandson on the couch like an invisible person, finally said, "Mingda is weak. I don't want her to marry into a family. The family's relationship is complicated and it's too exhausting." Originally, the emperor had a lot to say, but when the queen opened his mouth, he fell silent. The prince looked at his father, and at his mother, and decided to stand on his mother's side, so he said, "If you want me to say, it's better to choose one in the capital. The character and appearance are decent, and Mingda doesn't hate it. Relying on the royal family in the capital, no one can bully her." As soon as the prince opened his mouth, the emperor instantly said like a hedgehog, "No way." He said, "My wise man, not to mention a peerless number one, at least the family background and talent, as well as the character and appearance should not be bad, otherwise it would be too wrong for her." Although the prince thinks so too, he feels that it is better to choose one that suits his own heart rather than being angry with the family. He can't forget that he was picked up by several aristocratic families when he said that he was kissing. Humph, he and his father were obviously low enough. The family who married Kui's family also helped to choose. Mrs. Lu even went to the door to say kiss after he picked Mrs. Kui's daughter, saying that there were women in the family asking for hundreds of families. Mrs. Kui turned to him and refused, but turned around and responded to Mrs. Lu, but mentioned another Kui to him. "Lady here." There is a lot of negligence in the words, and they look down on the Longzi Li family. It is also because of this that the emperor and the crown prince gave up the Kui family's daughter in a fit of anger, and instead chose the Su family as the crown prince. In fact, his original words were that he would never be close to the aristocratic family. After that, the emperor held back for several years. First, he revised the clan history, lowered the Kui family from the first-class family to the third class, and also reduced the number of people selected from the Qinghe area. Therefore, if the children of Kui's family want to enter the official position, there are very few places they can get through the election, and they can only take the examinations to participate in the imperial examinations. Originally, after the enthronement today, the number of places to be elected every year has been reduced, and if the Qinghe area is reduced again, it may only be allocated a place in 3 or 2 years. Why are there so few officials in the Kui family in the DPRK now? Although it seemed that he had taken revenge, the crown prince sighed in his chest when he thought of what happened when he was picked, and Mingda was weaker than him and a girl. She was about to marry into an aristocratic family and be ridiculed, and ridiculed a few words. How miserable should she be? The prince thought so, and he was even more reluctant. Anyway, If you can't choose one of the children of the ministers in the court, then choose an ordinary one, and the family should forget it. When the emperor heard this tone, he couldn't help but want to get angry. The queen watched and put the child in the prince's arms and drove him away. Young slave misses his mother, you take him to see. The prince reluctantly took the child to find the prince. When Yingnu arrived in his father's arms, he became excited at once, not only jumped twice in his arms, but also patted the prince's face with his hands, screaming "Ah!" The prince grabbed his hand and said, "Wait to go back before flying." The crown princess on the other side of the screen seemed to hear her son's laughter, and ran out to pick him up immediately, and said to the crown prince, "Don't throw him into the sky, Joe Mandu said that this is not good for the child, and you will be startled, the soul is restless at night." The prince hummed, "How can the lonely son be so timid?" The empress had nothing to say about the father and son's stubborn temper. She patted the emperor's hand and leaned on the pillow tiredly. The emperor immediately put away his anger towards the prince, sat beside the queen and held her hand and asked, "Are you tired?" The queen sighed, "There are too many things in the palace recently." The queen almost never complained about the many palace affairs in front of the emperor. He couldn't help but be stunned when he heard the words, then he felt even more distressed. He held her hand and asked, "Would you like to choose a few female officials to help you?" "You can't make a decision on my behalf," the queen asked. "You wrote letters to the patriarchs of the great families. Did you take a fancy to their direct descendants?" The emperor said as a matter of course, "Naturally, it is a direct descendant. Our Mingda is also a direct princess. How can the concubines be worthy of it?" The queen asked with a smile, "There won't be a Zongzi, right?" The emperor said, "There are only two, the others are either unworthy of age, or have already engaged in marriage contracts, one of them is." The queen interrupted the emperor's words with a sigh, and she said, "Isn't it much easier than the queen like me, your majesty? Is your majesty willing to make Mingda work so hard?" The emperor frowned in thought. See you at 9. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1958. Seeing that the emperor frowned, the queen looked towards the screen, and the emperor followed her gaze. His eyes were not as good as when he was young, but he could still see them getting together to tease the eagle slave and projected on the screen. Shadow. The queen said, 2 days ago, she asked the imperial doctor to prescribe medicine again. The emperor frowned, "Why is no one reporting to me? Is it because of a qi disease?" "It's not a qi disease, it's probably because I was sweating at night and sucked it in. There was some wind heat, so I asked Joe Man to prescribe medicine," the queen said. "It's not very hot this year, so many children in the palace have not gotten sick." Even Yingnu looked at him. "Stronger than her, I really don't trust her to marry into everyone." She said, "This child is very thoughtful, and it would be too exhausting to go to such a family." The emperor's heart froze instantly, knowing that all his efforts during this period of time were in vain. He glanced at the queen reproachfully. Why didn't Zitong say it earlier? He also caused him to lose face in front of Lu Hui and a few others. The queen took his hand and said apologetically, "It's my fault, and I didn't expect His Majesty to be so anxious. I'm really busy these days." The emperor looked at the tiredness between the queen's brows and sighed, and the little anger disappeared in an instant. "The queen mother is seriously ill, you have to take care of the illness and handle the palace affairs, so you are very busy. But Mingda's marriage should also be put on the agenda. Originally, I thought it would be okay to wait 2 or 3 years. Didn't you say that it would be better for a girl to get married later?" The queen nodded. "But what the mother said is right. There are only so many good men. Mingda can wait for 2 or 3 years, but they won't wait. So I think it's better to choose the right one first, and then get married in 2 or 3 years at night." After thinking about it, the queen simply pulled the emperor to speak in the inner room. The queen said, "You have been moving a lot these days. I was busy and didn't notice it, but Mingde noticed it first. The emperor said proudly, she has always been careful and intelligent. The queen said, the people around her joked about what kind of concubine she wanted. The emperor asked curiously, what did she say? The queen sighed infinitely, she said that she is a princess, so she naturally listens to her father. It depends on whether the father wants to conspire, win over, or for the few days left for her in the future. The emperor was shocked and said sadly, why does Mingde think so? When the queen saw his eyes were red, she was like a wronged child, angry and funny, why are you hurting? Mingde doesn't mean to resent you, she knows very well that she is a princess and enjoys you the glory, wealth, and stability that he Dajin gave her should make some contribution to the royal family and Dajin. The child has a clear heart, and all she can bring out is a marriage. The emperor immediately said, I don't need her to collude, and I don't need her to win over. After a while, the emperor said, after dinner, I asked Xiao Yuanzheng to ask her for the ping and pulse, and there are not many days left. It was all the nonsense of the imperial physicians when she was sick, how can it be taken seriously? The queen sighed, you and I both know it's not fake. She has already walked through the gate of hell twice. In the future, I will be healthy in the future. The emperor refused to accept Mingde's short lifespan. He said, didn't Zhou Man go to her every once in a while to ask her for a pulse? Let her pierce the needle. That son of Yin Li, he grew up in the gate of hell. After walking a few times, they still say that he can't live for 2 years, but isn't he alive now? The queen lowered her eyes and said, but Zhou Man can't follow her all the time. Why not? The emperor said directly, in the future, I will reward Zhou Man to her. Queen. She endured, but couldn't hold back, she directly squeezed her fist and gave the emperor a shoulder, and the emperor, who raised a bar, calmed down a little. The queen said annoyed, I'm talking to you about the business. Zhou Man is not a palace maid. You can reward it if you say it. The emperor couldn't help muttering, the palace still has a long history, why should I give Mingde a long history? The queen said faintly, Chenchi can resign, what if Zhou Man doesn't want to be an official and resign? The emperor smiled and said, she will not be an official. If she is not, just give her more fields. Queen. The queen did not think of any objection for a while. However, the topic has achieved obvious results here. The emperor has given up his plan to marry a noble family deep in his heart, and began to pick up the family background in the capital with simple, vigorous, and both literary and martial arts, and his personality and appearance are not good. Poor teenagers come. He rummaged through his memories and found that none of them could be found. At present, the one who can barely meet these conditions is still called Bai Shan, but he is still engaged. However, even if he is not engaged, the emperor does not look down on him. Although his family background is barely okay, he also has literary talent and martial arts skills, and his personality and appearance are also good, but his widowed mother and widowed grandmother are in charge of the family. Isn't that still the same as marrying into those people? Inappropriate. Inappropriate. And there are many things for women, and there are more things for 3 women. The emperor felt that he would have to ask Yin Li tomorrow to check the situation of the unmarried young men in the imperial prison. It can only be found in the Qiaozijian. After all, most of the outstanding disciples from all over the country will come to the Qiaozijian. That is to say, those aristocratic families will keep some outstanding disciples for their own teaching. However, he has already ruled them all out, so he is not worried. It is impossible not to be anxious. The Queen Mother is more ill, Xiao Yuanzheng has not smiled for 2 days in a row, and so is the Emperor. Yin Li's speed was quite fast, because he didn't have to work very hard, he went directly to Kong Jiju and asked him to make a list of unmarried young men who are now 14 and under 20 years old in the Qiaozijian. Kong Jiju didn't expect that one day he would be able to have a relationship with La Media, but he still asked the doctors to report the unmarried students in their respective classes. Yin Li asked in the morning, got it in the afternoon, and then started to take the list to sit in the Imperial College, first find out their mid-year test scores, as long as they were directly excluded from the 12th place. There are only about 20 students in a class, and all of them are out of 12. Is there any need for consideration? Yin Li directly swiped the red bar on the list, and this time, most of the people on the list were swiped down. Then look at the family background, the origin is too far, and the family background is particularly bad to cross out. Early the next morning, he took the rest of the list and went to the Imperial College, started to walk over class by class, and ordered someone to stand up and show him. When face, ask a few questions casually, such as whether you are engaged, how many people are in the family. Too many people are crossed out, let alone those who are engaged, they are also crossed out directly. Yin Li took only half a day to walk away, and in the afternoon sorted out the rest of the list and handed it over to the emperor, leaving behind a group of ignorant teenagers and young people in the imperial prison. It's very late, everyone, go to bed, I'm going to be a more immortal, see you tomorrow, Manbeo. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1959. The emperor flipped through the list and was in a bad mood. Just these few people? I have never heard of many names. The emperor turned to the end and saw a barely familiar name, Ji Hao. Isn't this Ji Xiang's grandson? Yes, Yin Li said, I originally excluded him, but after thinking about it, there are not many people left in the imperial prison. His family background is still acceptable. The emperor hesitated for a while. Although he was very dissatisfied with Ji Hao, he still kept him. Then he looked at his ranking in the Imperial Academy and was a little disgusted, so low in the ranking. Yin Li said, he went in with an iron. The emperor disliked it even more. In addition, he had a history of falling from a horse in a fight with others, so the emperor thought about drawing a half circle after his name, which was not very satisfactory. But Yin Li lowered his eyes and saw that the emperor had drawn 3 semicircles in total, and all the others had been crossed out, obviously dissatisfied. Ji Ho can stay because of his family background, not himself. The emperor sighed, I remember that there was a man named Yi Xiang in the imperial prison, and he was also engaged. Yi Xiang is the grandson of Yi Da and was elected to the Chongguan Museum, but I have vaguely heard people say that he is already engaged, and his age. The difference from Princess Mingda is also a bit big. It's just that Feng Shangshu's grandson hasn't gotten married yet. The emperor directly denied it, he can't do it. He has not even gotten married. I heard Feng Qing say that his mind is uncertain. When choosing a consort for Chang Yu, the emperor didn't take a fancy to him, let alone now. However, include the unmarried school-age students in Chongguan Hall and Hongguan Hall, especially the students in Hongguan Hall, you should check carefully. Yin Li. Most of the people in the Hongguan Pavilion are the children of the royal family, and only a few are the children of high-ranking officials. King Gong had been serving in the Hongguan Pavilion before he was enthroned in the vassal. He was regarded as the actual person in charge of the Hongguan Pavilion, and it was also because the students of the Quazijian had a good sense of King Gong. Let the students of Chongguan Hall of Hongguan Hall be selected. These thoughts only circled in Yin Li's heart, and then he should go down to investigate. It is His Majesty's business to make decisions, he just needs to check it out. It's a pity that God still didn't stand on Prince Gong's side this time, because now in the Hongguan Pavilion, apart from the royal family, the remaining 4 disciples are all married or betrothed. There were not many left in the Chongguan Pavilion. Yin Li crossed out Bai Shan, who had already been engaged. He also crossed out his son. In the end, only Bai Chang, Lu Huan, and Lu Yu were recorded on the list. Because Feng Zhongping was denied from the beginning, Yin Li did not record it. So, in the evening, the prince saw Bai Chang's name on the list given to him by the emperor. The emperor didn't realize it, and was still talking. I remember that Lu Yu was your chosen companion. What's your impression of him? He's not suitable, the prince said. Although he hasn't gotten married yet, he has 2 concubines at home. The emperor said indifferently, let him send it. The prince heard the same thing, so he began to imagine it, and after a while, he shook his head. It's okay. The emperor looked at him. Why? The prince said, Lu Yu is not good at reading, far less than Mingda. The emperor pouted and said, your sister loves books. If it weren't for her weakness, I'm afraid that even your third brother might not be as good as her. It's okay to find someone who is just a little bit worse. If you can enter the Chongquen Museum, no matter how bad it is, you can't go anywhere, right? Although the emperor did not say these words, the prince saw it. But others don't know. How can he not know that Lu Yu was selected by himself? Lu Yu is really not good at studying. He chose him because he supported him. Before, he was short of money, but Lu Yu supported him a lot. His eldest brother led the army and was also his confidant. Oh, by the way, his eldest brother was one of the main forces he wanted to rebel. Although it is a good choice to marry his own sister to his confidant, Lu Yu is really not worthy of Mingda. The prince curled his lips in disgust, pointed at Lu Huan and Bai Chang, and said, isn't the royal father considering them? The emperor frowned. There are too many Lu family members, and Mrs. Lu is too shrewd and strong. That being said, he still drew a half circle after Lu Huan's name, and as for Lu Yu, he gave up. The father and son did not comment on Lu Yu, but focused on Bai Chang. The prince's eyelids couldn't help but jump. As Zhou Man often said, is the jumping of the left eye a good thing or a bad thing? The emperor also had some impressions of Bai Erlang. Not only did he meet at the Taoist temple, but he also met in the palace later. He thought about it and asked, I remember him, and I often follow Bai Shan and Zhou Man, and he is also from Long. Zhou Bai, right? Yes, and Bai Shan are cousins, but his family was separated from his great-grandfather's generation. Now his father is the patriarch, and there is only one direct elder brother in the family. He has both parents and even his grandmother. Listen. Said to be very gentle. The emperor didn't take Bai Chang to heart at first. Hearing the prince said so in detail, he couldn't help looking up at him and asked, are you satisfied with him? The prince fell silent. It was impossible to say that he was satisfied, but listening to the prince's words, it seemed that Mingda also liked this boy, and he sent them to Baiyun Temple in Yangzhou last time, and it seemed that the two of them got along okay. Therefore, although the prince was dissatisfied, he was still willing to mention him in front of the emperor. But it was a bit difficult for him to say good things about him, so he reluctantly said, let's make a taller man out of a short one. Urchin thinks he can study well, and his family is simple and average. The emperor said with disgust, this is normal, far worse than the big family. The prince had already learned from his mother the criteria for choosing a son-in-law, and said, every big family is generally complicated. Don't the father and mother want Mingdan not to work too hard, so they can only choose a simple family? The emperor thought about it, and he also made a half circle after Bai Erlang's name. Anyway, he was not very satisfied, so let's take a look. The prince thought so too, not because he identified Bai Chang. Both father and son feel that Mingda should be the best in the world, and no one is worthy of their daughter, sister. Man Bao knew that it was 2 days later when Bai Chang was on the list, and Chang Yu quietly told her, I saw it occasionally when I was going to deliver soup to the emperor. Why, your third junior brother still wants to be the concubine? Man Bao was surprised and asked, are there many people on the list? Chang Yu thought for a while, it looks like there are a dozen or 20 of them. I asked the royal father, and the royal father seemed to say that we have to look again. What they know now are superficial things, they have to check again, select, and then recruit them to take a look, test the school, and select the rest to recruit parents to meet, and finally decide. Down. See you at 6 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Zhu. Chapter 1960. When Man Bao returned to Chongguan Hall with the medicine box, Bai Shan and the others were sitting on the observation floor drinking tea and watching the scenery, and they waved to her when they saw Zhou Man. Man Bao went upstairs and asked, "Why don't you go to dinner? There's something wrong in the kitchen, and dinner has to be postponed for half an hour." Bai Shan pointed to the seat next to her and asked her to sit down. "Are you busy today?" "Fortunately, it's nothing, but Xiao Yuanzhen's face has been calm, and we didn't dare to breathe loudly when we were working in the Taiyuan hospital." Man Bao sat beside Bai Shan and saw a stack of stacks on the table. He asked, "What is this?" Bai Shan smiled and said, "Erlang plans to make money." Man Bao couldn't help but open it to see that he was planning to grow some fruits and vegetables to make money. She was very curious. "Where did you come from?" "I plan to rent his newly assigned job field with my husband." "How do you want to make money by farming?" Bai Erlang said, "Didn't you say that His Majesty is short of money?" Not to mention Bai Shan, Yin Or, who was beside him, couldn't help but be happy, and finally said, "I think what your Majesty lacks is not money, but a way to make money." Lu Huan has been watching him bury his head in writing for the past 2 days, and asked curiously, "Why do you suddenly think of being motivated? Didn't we say we would go out to study after 2 more years of study?" Bai Erlang was trying to please the emperor as if he wanted to become an official immediately. Man Bao looked at Lu Huan, then at Bai Erlang, and said, "I have inside information. You are both on the list." "What's on the list?" Man Bao shook his head and said, "On the list of consorts." Bai Erlang's eyes widened in surprise, Lu Huan's eyes widened in horror, and the two asked in unison, "Why?" Man Bao glanced at Lu Huan and said to Bai Erlang, "I heard from Chang Yu that His Majesty wants to choose a consort from the Imperial College and Chongguan Hall." Then he turned his head and said to Lu Huan, "You should have been selected by your family background." Lu Huan immediately said, "I don't believe it, so I don't want to be the concubine." Man Bao said, "It's not necessarily you, maybe it's not enough if you want to be." Bai Erlang asked him curiously, "What's wrong with being a concubine? Why are you so afraid?" "What's so good about being a concubine?" Lu Huan said, "I am neither lacking in glory, nor a lot of wealth, and I have never thought about having any great abilities. Besides, consort is not very good for the career. Why should I be a minister? Do you think the concubine is easy to do? If the princess does not live with their family, then she will have to live in another princess mansion, and then he will no longer be human." He was an outsider in the princess mansion, and half an outsider at home. Lu Huan said, "My family is not an aristocratic family, and now I want to say that the pro-princess is the princess, and the princess mansion will definitely be built at that time. The princess recruiting a concubine is similar to recruiting a child, so I don't want to be a child-in-law." Bai Erlang, "Princess Mingda is not a rude person, how could she embarrass her consort?" "It's not an embarrassment, it's a rule," Lu Huan said, "I don't want to be a concubine anyway." However, Lu Shangshu was moved, and he discussed with his old wife, "Lu Huan, that kid has no heart, and I'm afraid he won't do much in the officialdom in the future. Marrying the princess can still preserve the glory for 2 generations, I think it's okay." But Mrs. Lu said, "If it were other princesses, it would be fine. Princess Mingda is not suitable." "Why?" "Princess Mingda is frail, so she might not be able to live for a few years, let alone give birth to a child," she said. "If Huaner doesn't have a direct descendant, then what about 2 generations of glory?" Lu Shangshu fell silent. But the emperor was very fast, and within 2 days, he just made an excuse to call the 18 people who were still on the list into the palace to enjoy the flowers together. Well, the pomegranate flower I admire, but the fruit of the pomegranate is as big as a thumb. Lu Shangsha felt that the excuse the emperor made was not very good, and said to Lu Huan, when you enter the palace, don't say anything else, just eat and drink tea, you know. Obviously, he was finally persuaded by his old wife. Lu Huan nodded again and again, he thought so too. Bai Erlang, who was also called into the palace, hurriedly dragged Bai Shan to choose clothes for him, and said to Zhou Man, you and I can enter the palace together. Man Bao refused, it's rare for me to take a break. Anyway, the holiday will be closed tomorrow, so it's a day earlier today, Bai Erlang said, it's more convenient for you to enter and leave the palace, just make an excuse. Seeing that Man Bao was still missing the lunch and dinner made by her sister-in-law, he said, you also said that they are brothers and sisters from the same school. I can't even compare to 2 meals. Man Bao emphasized, it's 3 meals, and there's another meal in the morning. But since you said so, then you can call senior sister and I'll listen to it. If you can't tell, I will agree. Bai Shan picked out a coat, threw it on Bai Erlang and said with a smile, call me again brother. Bai Erlang hissed and shouted bitterly, senior sister, brother, can I ask you all? Man Bao nodded happily, okay, I promise you. Bai Shan asked with a smile, I temporarily thought of 2 poems about pomegranate flowers and pomegranates. Would you like to copy them? Bai Erlang hesitated, and finally shook his head, forget it, I don't mind copying you, but what if His Majesty chose me because of poetry, and he asks me to do it in the future, what if I can't do it? Isn't that deceiving Princess Mingda? Just as Bai Shan was about to nod his head in relief, Bai Erlang said, but you can read it to me and let me refer to it. Maybe after listening to it, my thoughts will spring up, and I can come up with several songs at once. Bai Shan and Man Bao. Bai Erlang was dressed brilliantly, Yushu went out in front of the wind, and Man Bao, who was dressed in common clothes, followed behind him with a medicine box. When I arrived at the gate of the palace, I saw other people who were also summoned. Some people have already inquired about the inside story, but most of them are standing here at the gate of the palace without knowing anything. Man Bao stood with her for a while, and then went into the palace. The reason she entered the palace was to see the Queen Mother. She is an imperial physician, and she really has the right to enter and leave the palace freely, just like the officials of the other 3 provinces and 6 ministries can freely enter and leave the office in the imperial city. Man Bao went to the imperial hospital, went to the imperial physician Lu and asked, how is the Queen Mother's health? Dr. Lu did not go into the palace to have needles today, otherwise I will go and give the Queen Mother an injection. After tying up, go to Changyu, and you should be able to see the result just by looking for it. Man Bao's plan was perfect, but imperial physician Lu said, last night, the Queen Mother's condition was a little repetitive, and now the Xiao Yuan is guarding over there, if you want to. I don't want to, Man Bao said immediately, forget it, I'll go and see Princess Changjiao and Princess Mingda. Going to the Queen Mother at this moment, there is a high possibility that Xiao Yuanzheng will scold him. Recently, Xiao Yuanzheng is in a very bad mood. Seeing her run away, imperial physician Lu shook his head with a smile, but he was really a child, and he took the initiative to run to the palace to find work after taking a nap. See you at 10 p.m.